Deep within the crystal caves of Drakmor, silence had become Liara's only companion for the past 3 months, broken only by the soft breathing of her sleeping daughter, Kira. The silver-scaled infant represented everything forbidden in Nethys society. Yet Liara could not bring herself to regret the love that had created this precious life. The caves stretched endlessly through the planet's core, their walls pulsing with natural light that responded to the emotions of any Nethys who entered them. Today they glowed a deep purple, reflecting Liara's constant fear and sorrow. She had chosen this particular cavern because it lay far from the main settlement, where the Council's magical sensors could not easily detect her presence. Kira stirred in her arms, her tiny silver scales catching the crystal light in ways that made Liara's heart ache. No Nethys child had ever been born with silver scales before. The traditional golden scales of her people were meant to appear only during the sacred crimson moon cycle, when the planet's 2 suns aligned perfectly and bathed Drakmor in red light. That alignment happened only once every 7 years, and the last one had occurred 4 years ago. Yara remembered the night Kira was conceived with painful clarity. She had been part of a mining expedition to the outer crystal fields when the raiders attacked. The Vorthak pirates had come from nowhere, their black ships descending like death itself. While her companions fought desperately to defend their mining equipment, Liara had been separated from the group and cornered in a narrow canyon. What happened next still haunted her dreams. The Vorthak leader had been different from his kind, somehow able to take a form that resembled a Nethys male. In her terrified state, confused by the magical illusions he cast, she had been unable to resist. By the time she realized the truth, it was too late. The seed of life had already taken root within her for months. She had hidden the pregnancy, using her knowledge of crystal magic to mask the changes in her body. She had hoped against hope that the child would be stillborn, sparing them both from the fate that awaited. But when Kira emerged into the world, healthy and beautiful despite her strange silver coloring, Liara knew that love had conquered her fear. The sound of distant voices echoed through the crystal, tunnels growing closer with each passing moment. Liara's blood turned to ice as she recognized the formal chanting of the Council's tracking ritual. They had found her at last. She clutched Kira closer to her chest, the baby's warmth the only comfort in a world that had suddenly become impossibly cold. Elder Thrax's voice boomed through the cavern, amplified by the crystal walls. Liara of the Western Cliffs, you are summoned to face judgment for the violation of our most sacred law. Come forth willingly and your suffering will be brief. Resist and you will know agony before you know peace. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the distinctive hum of tracking crystals that could follow the magical signature of any Nethys. Liara knew there was nowhere left to run. The caves that had sheltered them for months had become their prison. She stood slowly, her legs weak from months of poor nutrition and constant stress. I am here, she called out, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying clearly through the crystal chamber. I will not resist. The council guards appeared first, their ceremonial armor gleaming in the crystal light. Behind them walked Elder Thrax himself, his ancient golden scales dulled by age but his eyes still blazing with the fierce intelligence that had made him the most feared judge in Nethys history. He was followed by 6 other council members, their faces masks of grim determination. Elder Thrax stopped a few paces away from Liara, his gaze falling immediately to the silver-scaled infant in her arms. For a moment, something that might have been surprise flickered across his features, but it was quickly replaced by the cold authority of centuries of tradition. So the reports were true, he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute judgment. You have indeed brought forth life in the season of death. Not only have you violated our most sacred law, but you have produced an abomination. Silver scales have never been seen among our people. What dark magic have you dabbled in, child? Liara straightened her shoulders, finding courage she did not know she possessed. No dark magic, Elder. Only the consequences of circumstances beyond my control. I did not choose when this life would begin. Choice. Elder Thrax spat the word as if it tasted bitter. Our laws exist precisely because individual choice leads to chaos. For 3,000 years, the Crimson Moon has governed when new life may begin among the Nethys. This timing maintains the balance of our magical essence and prevents the chaos that once nearly destroyed our world. He gestured to the infant in Liara's arms. Look at what your circumstances have produced. Silver scales are not of our kind. They speak of corruption, of bloodlines tainted by forces we do not understand. The child is proof that the ancient warnings were true. Birth out of season brings forth monsters. She is not a monster, Liara said fiercely, her maternal instincts overriding her fear. She is innocent of any wrongdoing. If punishment must fall, let it fall on me alone. Elder Thrax's laugh was cold and without humor. Innocence is irrelevant. The law is clear. Any Nethys who bears young outside the Crimson Moon must face the void chasm, along with their offspring. This is not cruelty but necessity. One corrupted bloodline could destroy us all. The other council members nodded solemnly, their faces showing no trace of doubt or mercy. Liara realized that they truly believed in what they were doing. To them, she and Kira represented an existential threat to their entire species. Please, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She is just a baby. Let me explain what really happened. Let me tell you about the Raiders, about how this child came to be. Your explanations change nothing, Elder Thrax replied. The law does not bend for circumstances. It exists because circumstances change, but the danger remains constant. Whether your child was conceived in love or in violence makes no difference to the threat she represents. He turned to address his guards. Prepare the crystals for transport. We return to the Great Council. Chamber immediately. The sentence will be carried out at dawn, as tradition demands. As the guards moved forward to bind her hands with crystalline shackles, Liara looked down at Kira one last time. The baby's silver scales seemed to shimmer with their own inner light, and for just a moment, Liara could swear she saw something that looked almost like understanding in her daughter's young eyes. The journey back to the settlement felt like a march toward the end of the world. Ben Carter had been checking the perimeter sensors when the commotion started in the settlement below. His observation post overlooked the main plaza where the Nethys conducted their important ceremonies, and today something was clearly different. Instead of the usual peaceful gathering of crystal merchants and artisans, hundreds of dragon-like beings had assembled in perfect formation, their scales catching the light of Drakmor's twin suns. He adjusted his binoculars and focused on the center of the crowd, where a raised platform of pure crystal served as the council's judgment seat. 7 ancient Nethys sat in ceremonial robes, their golden scales dulled by age but their presence commanding absolute authority. Between them and the crowd, 2 figures stood alone under guard. Ben's breath caught when he recognized them. The young female Nethys he had occasionally seen gathering healing crystals near the human outpost, and a tiny infant cradled in her arms. Even from this distance, he could see that something was wrong. The woman's posture spoke of defeat and terror, while the baby's scales gleamed with an unusual silver color that seemed to disturb everyone who looked at it. What's happening down there? His communication device crackled with the voice of Private Walsh, who was monitoring from the eastern checkpoint. The whole city's gone quiet except for that gathering. Ben keyed his radio. Looks like some kind of trial. Better keep our distance and observe. You know how the Nethys feel about outsiders interfering in their business, as he watched. An elderly Nethys who could only be Elder Thrax rose from the central seat and began speaking in the deep, resonant tones that carried clearly across the plaza. Ben's universal translator picked up the words, and what he heard made his blood run cold. Citizens of Drakmor, we gather today to witness justice for a crime that strikes at the very heart of our survival. Liara of the Western Cliffs has violated our most sacred law by bearing young outside the blessed time of the Crimson Moon. More disturbing still, her offspring bears silver scales unknown to our kind. This is not merely disobedience, but corruption. The crowd murmured in agreement, their voices creating a low rumble that seemed to shake the crystal buildings themselves. Ben could see the fear in their postures, The way they drew back from the accused as if her very presence might contaminate them, Elder Thrax continued. Our ancestors established the Crimson Moon Law after the Age of Chaos nearly destroyed our world. Uncontrolled breeding led to unstable magical abilities that turned our own children into weapons of destruction. Only by restricting new life to the time of perfect celestial alignment can we ensure the stability of our species. Ben lowered his binoculars, his hands shaking slightly. He had heard stories about Nethys law from his briefings, but he had never imagined witnessing something like this. The woman below was barely more than a child herself, and the baby she held was innocent of any wrongdoing. Yet both were apparently condemned to death for something completely beyond their control. Liara of the Western Cliffs. Elder Thrax's voice rang out again. Do you understand the charges against you? Do you accept the wisdom of our ancestors who established these laws for our protection? The young mother's voice was barely audible through Ben's equipment. I understand the charges, Elder, but I do not understand how justice can demand the death of an innocent child. My daughter has done nothing wrong. Wrong. Elder Thrax's laugh was bitter. Child, your daughter's very existence is wrong. Those silver scales mark her as other than Nethys. She is proof that violation of our laws brings forth abominations that threaten everything we hold dear. The sentence is not punishment, but prevention, Ben's. Training had emphasized the importance of non-interference in local customs. The Galactic Defense Corps maintained outposts on dozens of worlds, and their primary mission was observation and protection of human interests. They were strictly forbidden from imposing human values on alien societies, no matter how disturbing those societies might seem. But as he watched the terrified mother clutch her baby closer, Ben felt something inside him rebelling against his orders. This wasn't about cultural differences or alien customs. This was about the fundamental right to life, something that should transcend species boundaries. His comm device buzzed with an incoming message from Colonel Hayes. Carter, I'm monitoring the situation from headquarters. Remember your training. The Nethys have governed themselves for millennia. Their ways are not our ways, but we are guests on their world. Yes, sir, Ben replied automatically. But his heart wasn't in the acknowledgement. He had joined the Defense Corps because he believed in protecting the innocent. How could he stand by and watch two innocent beings die for something they had no control over? Through his binoculars, he watched as the council members rose in unison, their decision apparently unanimous. Elder Thrax raised a crystal staff that gleamed with inner fire. By the authority granted to us by 3 millennia of tradition, we sentence Liara of the Western Cliffs and her offspring to be cast into the void chasm at dawn. Let their sacrifice preserve the purity of our bloodline and the stability of our world. The crowd erupted in what sounded like approval, but Ben noticed that not all voices joined the chorus. Some Nethys remained silent, their expressions troubled. Perhaps he was not the only one who found this sentence difficult to accept. As the guards moved to escort Liara away, the young mother looked up toward the hillside where Ben's observation post was hidden. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance, and he saw something in her gaze that transcended species. Desperation, hope, and a mother's love that would do anything to protect her child. Ben made his decision in that instant. He couldn't directly interfere with Nethys law, but perhaps there was another way. Perhaps he could find information that might change the Council's perspective. The Defense Corps database contained detailed studies of thousands of alien species. Maybe somewhere in those files was evidence that could save 2 innocent lives. He began packing his equipment with new purpose. By dawn, he would either find a way to help, or he would have to live with the knowledge that he had watched murder happen and done nothing to stop it. For a human raised on stories of heroes who stood up to injustice, that was not an option he could. Except as the sun began to set over Drakmor, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and crimson, Ben headed back to the human compound with a growing sense of urgency. Time was running out, and 2 lives hung in the balance. The human compound's research center hummed with activity despite the late hour. Ben had spent the entire night diving deep into the Defense Corps database, searching through thousands of xenobiological reports and cultural studies. His Eyes burned from staring at screen after screen of data, but he couldn't afford to rest. Dawn was only hours away. Dr. Naya entered the research center quietly, her golden scales dim with exhaustion. She was one of the few Nethys who had agreed to work with the human scientists, sharing knowledge about crystal technology and planetary geology. More importantly, she was one of the younger generation, who sometimes questioned the rigid traditions of her people. "Soldier Carter," she said softly, "I heard about your request for historical records. I must warn you, what you seek could be dangerous knowledge. The Council does not appreciate those who dig too deeply into the past." Ben looked up from his terminal, hope flickering in his tired eyes. "Dr. Naya, I need to understand, why are your people so terrified of out-of-season births? There has to be more to it than just tradition." Dr. Naya hesitated, glancing around the empty research center before taking a seat beside him. "What I am about to tell you is not in your human databases. It is knowledge that the Council has tried to suppress for generations, but perhaps it is time someone outside our species understood the true history." She activated a holographic projector, and images filled the air above them. Ancient Nethys cities, far grander than anything that existed today, stretched across landscapes of impossible beauty. Crystal spires reached toward the sky, and magical energies flowed like rivers of light through perfectly designed architecture. 3,000 years ago, during what we call the Age of Prosperity, our people numbered in the billions. Dr. Naya began. "We had no restrictions on when children could be born. Families were large and our population grew rapidly. At first, this seemed like a blessing. More minds to advance our sciences, more hands to build our cities, more magic users to enhance our technology." The holographic scenes shifted, showing Nethys children playing in crystal gardens. But Ben noticed something disturbing about the images. Some of the young ones displayed scales in unusual colors. Silver, like little Kira, but also deep purple, brilliant blue, and even pure white. The genetic diversity was unprecedented. Dr. Naya continued. Children born at different times of year began showing different magical abilities. Those born during certain celestial alignments could manipulate gravity, others could phase through solid matter, some could even glimpse possible futures. Ben leaned forward, fascinated despite the tragic circumstances. "That sounds like it should have been beneficial. More abilities would mean a stronger species." Dr. Naya's expression grew dark. "We thought so too. For several generations, these new abilities seemed like gifts. Our civilization advanced at an incredible rate. We built structures that defied physics, developed technologies that seemed to work by magic, and even began exploring other dimensions." The holographic display changed again, showing scenes of chaos and destruction. Cities crumbled as gravitational fields went wild. Nethys children phased through floors and became trapped in solid rock. Others, glimpsing dark futures, became consumed by madness and lashed out at everything around them. "The problem was control," Dr. Naya explained. "Traditional Nethys magic is stable because it develops slowly and predictably during specific times. But these new abilities manifested randomly and with incredible power. Children as young as 5 could accidentally tear holes in reality. Others would lose control during emotional moments and devastate entire districts." Ben watched in horror as the holographic records showed families turning against each other. Nethys with traditional abilities fought desperately against their own children whose powers had become uncontrollable. The elegant crystal cities became battlegrounds where reality itself became a weapon. "The chaos wars lasted for nearly 2 centuries, Dr. Naya continued. By the end, our population had fallen from billions to millions. Entire continents were rendered uninhabitable by magical storms that still rage today. The survivors made a desperate decision. They would limit breeding to the one time of year when magical development was most stable. The final images showed the signing of the sacred compact. Thousands of surviving Nethys swearing eternal oaths to never again allow uncontrolled breeding. The document was written in crystal that still glowed with binding magic, making it impossible for future generations to ignore. "The Crimson Moon alignment creates perfect magical conditions," Dr. Naya explained. Children conceived during that time develop powers slowly and predictably. For 3,000 years, this system has prevented another catastrophe, but it has also slowly reduced our population. We now number fewer than 50,000 on all of Drakmor. Ben studied the data, his mind racing. But what about little Kira? Her silver scales are different from the Chaos children in your records. Have you observed her abilities directly? Dr. Naya glanced nervously toward the door. I have been watching her secretly. What I have discovered challenges everything the Council believes. Her magical signature is not chaotic at all. In fact, it appears more stable than traditional Nethys children. The silver scales may not be a sign of corruption, but of evolution. She activated another display, showing energy readings from various Nethys individuals. Traditional golden-scaled children showed regular but limited magical patterns. The historical Chaos children displayed wild, unpredictable energy spikes. But Kira's readings were different. Her magical signature was not only stable but appeared to be naturally harmonic with Drakmor's crystal formations. I believe, Dr. Naya said quietly, that nature is trying to give us a way to survive. Our current breeding restrictions are causing slow extinction. Children like Kira might be the key to maintaining both our population and our magical stability. But the Council is too frightened by history to consider that possibility. Ben leaned back in his chair, pieces of a plan beginning to form in his mind. Dr. Naya, would you be willing to present this research to the Council? Not to challenge their authority, but to show them that their ancient laws might need updating to prevent extinction. Dr. Naya's scales paled. Soldier Carter, that would be treason. The Council considers any questioning of the sacred compact to be heresy. I could face the void chasm myself for even suggesting such a thing. But if you don't, Ben said urgently, your entire species might face extinction anyway. Slow death through declining population or quick death through adherence to laws that no longer serve their purpose. Outside the research center, the first hints of dawn were beginning to appear. On the horizon, time was running out. And Ben realized that saving Liara and Kira would require more than just good intentions. It would require convincing an entire civilization to reconsider beliefs that had kept them safe for 3 millennia. Question was whether courage and new evidence could overcome 3,000 years of fear. The first rays of dawn painted the crystal spires of Drakmor in shades of amber and gold. But Ben Carter felt no beauty in the sight. Time was slipping away like sand through his fingers, and with it, the lives of 2 innocent beings. He had less than an hour before the execution was scheduled to begin, and his desperate plan was still nothing more than fragments of hope and scattered data files. Dr. Naya sat across from him in the research center, her golden scales flickering with nervous energy as she reviewed the information they had compiled. Through the night, spread across multiple screens were xenobiological studies from dozens of worlds, showing how various species had adapted their reproductive cycles to survive changing circumstances. The evidence was compelling, but presenting it would require more courage than either of them had ever needed before. The Zelani of Proxima. 7 modified their breeding seasons when solar flares threatened their traditional cycles. Ben read from one report. The Korthak adapted to shorter reproductive windows when their homeworld's orbit became unstable. In every case, species that remained flexible survived, while those that clung to outdated patterns faced extinction. Dr. Naya highlighted another study on her screen. The Volari are particularly relevant. They originally bred only during specific moon phases, but when their population dropped below critical levels, they gradually expanded their reproductive seasons. Their children showed no negative effects, and their species recovered. Ben felt a spark of hope as he absorbed the data. This is exactly what we need. Proof that adapting reproductive laws doesn't lead to chaos but to survival. But how do we get the Council to listen to evidence that challenges 3,000 years of fear? Dr. Naya's expression was troubled. The Council respects strength and tradition above all else. They will not simply accept research from outsiders. Even if that research could save our species, we need to present this information in a way that honors their authority while opening their minds to new possibilities. Ben stood and began pacing, his mind racing through diplomatic protocols and cultural sensitivities. What if we frame this not as challenging their wisdom but as providing them with new tools to fulfill their ancient mandate? The original law was created to prevent extinction through chaos. If we can show that strict adherence to that law now threatens extinction through decline, we might be able to appeal to their core purpose rather than their specific methods. Dr. Naya's eyes widened as she grasped the strategy. You mean we present adaptation as the ultimate expression of traditional wisdom rather than a rejection of it? Show them that truly honoring their ancestors means being willing to evolve when circumstances change. Exactly, Ben said, feeling the first real optimism he had experienced all night. But we need more than just comparative studies. We need specific data about Nethys population trends and Kira's unique abilities. Can you access birth and death records for the past several centuries? Dr. Naya hesitated, her claws hovering over the terminal controls. Those records are restricted to council members only. Accessing them without permission would be a serious crime, but... She paused, looking at the screens full of evidence. Extinction is a more serious crime against future generations. Her claws moved swiftly across the controls, bypassing security protocols with the skill of someone who had helped design the systems. Within minutes, holographic charts filled the air above them, showing population trends that painted a stark picture of Nethys decline. Look at this, Dr. Naya whispered, her voice filled with growing alarm. Our birth rate during Crimson Moon cycles has dropped by 60% over the past 5 centuries. Death rates have increased due to various conflicts and diseases. At current trends, we will be functionally extinct within 8 generations. Ben studied the projections, his human mind quickly grasping the mathematical implications. Your people are so focused on preventing the chaos of the past that they're not seeing the extinction approaching in the future. These numbers are devastating. Dr. Naya pulled up additional data. It gets worse. The magical potency of traditional births has also been declining. Children born during recent Crimson Moons show weaker abilities than their ancestors. Our bloodline is becoming diluted through excessive restriction. But Kira shows stronger magical signatures than normal children, Ben observed. What if out-of-season births are nature's way of compensating for the decline? What if the silver scales indicate enhanced rather than corrupted abilities? Dr. Naya accessed her secret observations of the infant. Her energy patterns are remarkable. Not only are they stable, but they seem to resonate with Drakmore's crystal matrix in ways I have never seen before. She might be able to access magical abilities that we have lost over generations of restriction. Ben felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together. Dr. Naya, what if we could arrange for the council to observe Kira's abilities directly? Not in a laboratory setting that might frighten them, but in a controlled demonstration that shows her potential rather than focusing on her differences. Dr. Naya looked skeptical. The council would never agree to delay an execution for scientific observation. They see Kira as a threat to be eliminated, not a phenomenon to be studied. Then we don't ask them to delay the execution, Ben said, his plan finally crystallizing. We ask them to grant a traditional right that even the most conservative council member would have to respect. What about the ancient custom of allowing the condemned to speak in their own defense? Dr. Naya's scales brightened as she understood. The right of final truth. It is written into the sacred compact itself. Any Nethys facing the void chasm may request 1 hour to present evidence in their defense. The council cannot refuse without violating their own most sacred laws. Ben smiled grimly. And during that hour, we present everything, the population data, the comparative studies, and most importantly, a demonstration of Kira's abilities. We show them that executing this child would be throwing away their species' best hope for survival. Dr. Naya stood, her posture straightening with new resolve. It is a desperate plan with little chance of success. The council's fear runs deeper than logic or evidence, but it is the only plan that offers any hope at all. Ben gathered the data files and secured them on a portable device. Then we'd better hurry. The sun is rising, and we have very little time to save 2 lives and possibly an entire species. As they prepared to leave the research center, Dr. Naya placed a gentle claw on Ben's shoulder. "Soldier Carter, why are you doing this? Your people have no obligation to interfere in our affairs. You could simply watch and report, as your protocols require." Ben met her gaze with steady determination. "Because sometimes doing what's right matters more than following what's safe. That's what makes us human." The void chasm stretched before them like the mouth of eternity itself. Ben had never seen anything so terrifying in his years of military service. The massive crack in Drakmore's surface plunged down into darkness so complete that even the planet's crystal formations could not illuminate its depths. According to Nethys legend, anything cast into the chasm would fall forever through dimensions beyond mortal understanding. Thousands of Nethys had gathered around the ceremonial platform that extended over the abyss. Their scales reflected the morning light in a dazzling display of gold and amber, but their expressions were somber. Even those who supported the ancient laws seemed subdued by the prospect of watching a mother and infant plunge to their doom. Liara stood at the edge of the platform, still clutching baby Kira to her chest. The infant's silver scales seemed to glow more brightly in the morning light, creating an almost ethereal beauty that made her seem like a creature from another realm entirely. Elder Thrax and the Eye, 6 other council members flanked the condemned pair, their ceremonial robes billowing in the wind that rose from the chasm's depths. Ben and Dr. Naya pushed through the crowd, the portable data device hidden beneath Ben's military cloak. They had to reach the platform before the ritual began, but the press of bodies made progress agonizingly slow. Every second that passed brought Liara and Kira closer to their fate. Elder Thrax raised his crystal staff, and the crowd fell silent. "Citizens of Drakmore, we gather at this sacred place to witness the preservation of our species. The laws that govern us were written in the blood of our ancestors who died to protect us from chaos. Today we honor their sacrifice by maintaining the purity they died to preserve." Liara lifted her head, her voice carrying clearly across the assembled multitude. "Elder Thrax, I invoke the right of final truth as granted by the sacred compact. I request 1 hour to present evidence in my defense." Murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. The right of final truth was ancient and rarely invoked, but it was indeed written into their most fundamental laws. Elder Thrax's expression darkened, but he could not refuse without undermining the very legal foundation of Nethys society. "The right is acknowledged," he said reluctantly. "You have 1 hour to present your case, but know that no words can change the fundamental truth of your violation." Ben felt a surge of relief as he and Dr. Naya finally reached the platform. Liara's eyes widened with surprise and hope when she saw them approaching. Dr. Naya stepped forward, her posture formal and respectful despite the revolutionary nature of what they were about to attempt. "Honored Council," Dr. Naya began. "I am Dr. Naya of the Crystal Sciences Institute. I request permission to present evidence relevant to this case. Evidence that may affect not just the fate of these 2 individuals but the survival of our entire species." Elder Thrax's eyes narrowed. "You overstep your bounds, Dr. Naya. This is a matter of law, not science." "With respect, Elder," Ben interjected, stepping forward despite the hostile glares directed at him. "Sometimes law and science must work together to serve the greater good. The evidence we have gathered suggests that your ancient laws, while once necessary, may now be contributing to the very extinction they were designed to prevent." The crowd erupted in angry voices. Many Nethys shouted accusations of human interference and blasphemy, but Elder Thrax raised his staff for silence, his curiosity apparently outweighing his anger. "You have 30 minutes to present this evidence, but know that if your words prove empty, you will join the condemned in the chasm." Dr. Naya activated the portable projector, and holographic displays filled the air above the platform. The population charts appeared first, showing the steady decline of Nethys numbers over the past 5 centuries. Gasps of shock rose from the crowd as they saw visual proof of their species' gradual extinction. "These are official birth and death records," Dr. Naya announced. They show that strict adherence to the Crimson Moon Law has reduced our breeding rate to unsustainable levels. At current trends, the Nethys will be extinct within 8 generations. Elder Thrax studied the data, his expression troubled. These numbers are concerning, but they do not justify abandoning the laws that have kept us safe for 3 millennia. Ben stepped forward. Elder Thrax, with your permission, I would like to share data from the Galactic Defense Corps archives. Information about dozens of species that faced similar challenges. The holographic display shifted to show the comparative studies they had compiled. Species after species that had adapted their reproductive cycles to meet changing circumstances. The Valari, the Korthak, the Zalani, all had faced extinction through rigid adherence to outdated patterns, and all had survived through careful adaptation. These species prove that modifying reproductive laws doesn't lead to chaos. Ben explained. It leads to survival. The key is gradual, controlled change rather than abandonment of all restrictions. Elder Thrax was clearly struggling with the implications. But what of the Chaos children? What of the silver scales that mark this infant as other than Nethys? Dr. Naya stepped forward, her voice strong with conviction. Elder, I have been secretly studying this child. Her magical signature is not chaotic but harmonic. The silver scales may not indicate corruption but evolution. Nature may be providing us with exactly what we need to survive. She activated another display showing Kira's energy readings compared to traditional Nethys children. The baby's magical patterns were not only stable, but showed potential capabilities that far exceeded normal ranges. I believe, Dr. Naya continued, that children born outside the Crimson Moon cycle may possess abilities we have lost through excessive restriction. Rather than representing a threat, they may be our salvation. Elder Thrax looked down at baby Kira, who had been remarkably quiet throughout the proceedings. As if sensing his scrutiny, the infant opened her eyes and looked directly at him. For a moment, her silver scales pulsed with soft light, and the crystal formations around the chasm responded with harmonic resonance. The effect was unmistakable. Kira's presence seemed to strengthen and stabilize the magical energies around them. Several council members exchanged startled glances as they felt the enhancement of their own abilities. This is impossible, whispered Council Member Drax. No infant should be able to affect the crystal matrix at such a distance. Liara spoke for the first time since invoking her right. She has always had this effect. When she sleeps near the healing crystals, they glow brighter. When she cries, the warning crystals sing in harmony. She doesn't disrupt our magic. She enhances it. Elder Thrax stood in troubled silence, the weight of decision heavy on his ancient shoulders. Around him, the crowd watched with growing uncertainty as their fundamental beliefs were challenged by undeniable evidence. You ask me to risk everything our ancestors died to protect, he said finally. To gamble our species' survival on theories and possibilities. No, Ben replied quietly. We ask you to save everything your ancestors died to protect. They created these laws to prevent extinction. If those same laws now cause extinction, then honoring their true purpose requires changing their methods. That our hour was almost over, and the fate of 2 innocent lives hung in the balance of an ancient mind grappling with impossible choices. The silence that followed Ben's words seemed to stretch across eternity. Elder Thrax stood motionless at the edge of the void chasm, his ancient eyes fixed on the tiny silver-scaled infant who had unknowingly become the focal point of his species' future. Around them, thousands of Nethys waited with barely contained tension for a decision that would either preserve 3 millennia of tradition or shatter it forever. Baby Kira chose that moment to reach out with one small hand toward the nearest crystal formation. The massive crystal responded immediately, its inner light pulsing in perfect rhythm with her tiny heartbeat. The harmonic resonance spread through the entire crystal network around the chasm, creating a symphony of light and sound that none of the assembled Nethys had ever experienced. Before the crystals sing for her, whispered Council Member Velka, her voice filled with awe. In all my centuries, I have never seen such a response. She doesn't command them. She communes with them, Elder Thrax slowly approached Liara and her child, his expression unreadable. The crowd held its collective breath as he extended one gnarled finger toward Kira. The infant grasped it without fear, and immediately the elder's own scales began to glow with renewed vitality. His magical essence, dulled by age, suddenly blazed with the power he had possessed in his youth. "Impossible," he breathed. "She doesn't drain or corrupt. She restores and enhances. This child is not an abomination. She is a gift." Dr. Naya stepped forward, sensing the shift in the council's mood. "Elder, this is exactly what our population data suggests we need. Children with enhanced abilities who can strengthen rather than destabilize our magical matrix. The silver scales may be the key to our species' renewal." Elder Thrax straightened, his restored energy evident in every movement. "But the risks, what if we are wrong? What if allowing out-of-season births leads to the same chaos that nearly destroyed us before?" Ben could see the fear still lingering in the ancient leader's eyes. 3,000 years of terror couldn't be overcome by a single demonstration, no matter how compelling. "Elder Thrax, what if we propose a compromise, a careful trial, period where out-of-season births are monitored rather than forbidden? We could study children like Kira to understand their abilities before making permanent changes to your laws." Council member Drax nodded thoughtfully. "A testing period would honor both tradition and necessity. We could establish strict guidelines and safeguards while allowing limited exceptions to the breeding laws." Elder Thrax released Kira's tiny hand and turned to address the assembled crowd. "Citizens of Drakmor, we face a choice that our ancestors could never have imagined. The laws they created to save us from chaos may now be leading us toward extinction through decline. The evidence presented here today cannot be ignored." The crowd stirred uneasily, centuries of conditioning warring with the undeniable proof they had witnessed. Some voices called for maintaining tradition regardless of consequences, while others urged careful consideration of the new evidence. "I propose," Elder Thrax continued, "that we establish a new protocol, the trial of seasons. Children born outside the Crimson Moon will be studied rather than condemned. If they prove beneficial to our species, we will gradually expand our reproductive laws. If they prove dangerous, the traditional penalties will be reinstated." Liara's eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. "Elder, you offer more mercy than I dared hope for. I accept any conditions you impose if it means my daughter lives." "Your daughter will live," Elder Thrax declared, "but she will also bear a great responsibility. She will be among the first subjects of our study. Her development will be carefully monitored, and her abilities will be tested at every stage. She must prove that evolution, not corruption, has marked her with those silver scales." Ben felt a complex mixture of victory and concern. They had saved 2 lives, but the long-term outcome remained uncertain. Kira would grow up under constant scrutiny, her every action interpreted as evidence for or against changing ancient laws. It was better than death, but far from the freedom any child should enjoy. Dr. Naya approached Elder Thrax with a formal bow. "Elder, I volunteer to oversee the scientific aspects of the trial of seasons. My research will be transparent and available to all council members. We will proceed with the utmost caution and respect for our traditions." Elder Thrax nodded approvingly. "Your willingness to take responsibility for this endeavor is noted and appreciated, Dr. Naya. But remember, if this experiment fails, the consequences will fall on all who supported it." As the crowd began to disperse, many Nethys approached Ben with expressions of curiosity and gratitude. Some thanked him for his intervention, while others questioned whether humans should involve themselves in Nethys affairs. Ben accepted both praise and criticism with equal grace, understanding that change was never easy for any species. Colonel Hayes materialized from the crowd, his expression stern but not entirely disapproving. "Carter, you realize you've technically violated about 6 different protocols regarding non-interference." "Yes, sir," Ben replied without apology. "I'm prepared to face whatever consequences my actions require." Colonel Hayes studied him for a long moment. "As it happens, Saving 2 lives and potentially preventing the extinction of an allied species falls under our mandate to protect galactic stability. Your actions were unorthodox, but they served the greater good. Consider this an official commendation rather than a reprimand. Ben felt a wave of relief, but his attention was quickly drawn back to Liara as she approached with Kira still cradled in her arms. "Soldier, Carter?" she said softly. "I have no words adequate to express my gratitude. You have given my daughter not just life, but the chance to prove her worth." "She'll prove it," Ben said with conviction. "I've seen enough alien species to recognize potential when I see it. Kira represents your people's future, not their downfall." Liara smiled, the first genuine expression of joy Ben had seen from her. "Would you like to hold her? I think she would like to thank her champion properly." Ben carefully accepted the infant, marveling at how light she felt despite the enormous weight of expectation she would carry throughout her life. Kira looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too knowing for someone so young, her silver scales catching the light in patterns that reminded him of stellar formations. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "You've got quite an adventure ahead of you, but I have a feeling you're going to change this world for the better." As if in response, Kira gurgled softly, and every crystal formation within sight pulsed once in perfect unison. The message was clear. Change had already begun. 6 months later, Ben received regular reports about Kira's development. She was exceeding all projections for magical ability, while showing none of the instability that had characterized the Chaos Children of ancient times. More importantly, 3 other out-of-season births had been permitted under the trial of Yi. Season's protocol, and all 3 children displayed similar beneficial traits. The Nethys were slowly, cautiously beginning to adapt their laws to meet the needs of a changing world. It wasn't the dramatic revolution that some might have hoped for, but it was progress. And for a species that had remained unchanged for 3 millennia, even small steps toward adaptation represented enormous courage. Ben often thought about the day at the Void Chasm, and the role that human compassion had played in saving 2 lives, and possibly an entire species. It reminded him why the Defense Corps existed, not just to protect human interests, but to ensure that justice and mercy had champions among the stars. Sometimes the most profound victories weren't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. Sometimes they were won by simply refusing to let injustice go unchallenged, regardless of the consequences.